Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Tom Murray, the Director of Innovation for Future Ready Schools, a project of All4Ed located in Washington, D.C. Future Ready Schools is a collaboration between All4Ed and a vast coalition of over 60 national and regional partners. The goal of Future Ready Schools is to maximize learning opportunities for all students and to help school districts move quickly towards student-centered learning. The effort provides educators with resources and support to ensure that local strategic and technology plans align with instructional best practices, are implemented by highly trained teachers, and maximize personal and authentic learning experiences for all students, particularly those from historically underserved communities. As always, the hashtag for today's webinar is Future Ready. Thanks for making an investment in your time and for joining us today. I'm going to be your host on this webinar on emerging stronger post-pandemic. With all we've been through in the past 2 years, I'm not sure we could have a more important topic at a relevant time as this one today. And I am so excited to have four incredible leaders from the same school district, Indian Hill in Ohio. So joining us for today's event, we have Dr. Erin Owens, the primary school principal, Whitney Buell, the elementary school principal, Jennifer Euland, the middle school principal, and Jeff DeMatteo, the high school principal. So we're going to start here. Quick introductions. Erin, if we can jump over to you, just a real quick introduction. Tell us a little bit about your building, your students, how long you've been there, and then we'll jump over to Whitney.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. I am the principal of the primary school. We are a K-2 school directly across the street from the elementary. We have 483 students in grades K through 2. 63 staff members. I've been here 4 years, 2 of those as the assistant principal, and then the last 2 years as the principal.
Awesome. Whitney, let's go over to you. Tell us about the elementary school.
Our elementary school houses our 3rd to 5th graders in the district. We have about 530 students, and I have been here for 5 years.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. And Jen, how about at the middle level?
Well, I've been here for 5 years, and we serve grades 6 through 8, a little over 500 students. Currently, we're in the process of building a new school. So our 3 different grade levels are in 3 different locations. So I get to do a lot of traveling this year.
How about it? I guess you do. Jeff, talk about the high school.
So Indian Hill High School has roughly 650 students. It is also my 5th year here, along with some of our colleagues on screen. As Mrs. Euland said, we have adopted some of the grades. So really, we're normally 650, but we have 8th graders with us through the halls each day. So we're roughly 800 plus, and looking forward to what the future will bring.
Awesome. Well, I also want to give a shout out to your superintendent, Kurt Konecki. He was on our podcast there at Future Ready, and an incredible leader there as well, and helped me organize the 4 of you, pulling you together to be able to record this webinar today. So thank you for joining us. Let's actually start by reflecting in the last couple of years. I've personally been able to connect with your district very early on in the pandemic. We connected, and I want to walk through a little bit about your journey in the past couple of years as principals, as the leaders of the building. Talk to us at the different levels, some of the things that you've been through, and then we're going to move to really emerging from the pandemic and some of the stories that have come out of it, and personally why I respect your work so much as a district. And so, Erin, let's go back to you. If you could reflect as the principal at that primary level over the past 2 years, talk to us a little bit about that journey from the pandemic.
Yeah, on the first day of my principalship, I realized I was bringing together my staff to ask them to do everything that they know how to do differently. And I didn't have the answers of what that might look like. Like, how do you pass out pens, but nobody touches them? And every step that we took together was new. And I appreciate that they trusted me to lead them through that, because there was no handbook for the pandemic. So in many ways, coming in as a principal at that time allowed us to bond. They had to trust me, and I had to trust them, because neither one of us knew what was going to happen on a day-to-day basis. So we've been through a lot together, and in the end, we come out smiling. We're still glad to be here every day. And change was certainly accelerated. You know, change can be slow in K-12 education, and it was really accelerated over the last 2 years. So that's been exciting to see.
Yeah, how about it? And what a story there in terms of, hey, becoming that principal with here's our first meeting. We're not doing it the way we've done it. We now need to move virtual, move online. I mean, kudos to you for being willing to move in the midst of that chaos there. But wow, what a kickoff to that. Whitney, let's jump over to you. Reflect a little bit of the past couple of years at the elementary level in Indian Hill.
I agree with Aaron that a lot of trust had to be gained to make decisions that we didn't know if they were the right decisions to be made. When we came back to the building after the spring of 2020, we decided that we were going to self-contain all of our students because we thought that that was the best for them, that they wouldn't have to move around the building. And that meant quite a change for our teachers because they are all departmentalized here at the elementary school. Early on into that year, we decided, wow, maybe the teachers can change rooms and go back to their specialized area. So we did that and departmentalized about a month after we came back to the building, and then went virtual after that. So we had a lot of change. But one thing I've learned through challenging times, you grow. And I think that everyone here at our building has grown through this, and we've become stronger. We've become stronger educators. And we really, I think, just put students first through the whole thing. That was the district's motto. We put our students first and we do content second. And I think that that was the right way to go because that's what we needed to do, what was best for our kids.
Absolutely. Love that mindset. Jen, talk to us about the middle school journey in the past couple of years.
Sure. A lot of what Whitney and Aaron had said, but one of the things that we faced is we had students who were both virtual and in person. And so we had to reconfigure our staff and put them on new teams. And gosh, the collaboration that took place because we had teachers who had been teaching 7th grade for years, and now we're in an 8th grade online course. And just to see how everybody came together, the patience that we all exhibited, understanding and the empathy. We also had students who were coming back and forth from in-person to virtual, and sometimes that would change on the moment's notice because all of a sudden you were in quarantine. But just looking at it from a different perspective, I think teachers understood how it felt for students to feel when they were at home. So just the empathy, the collaboration that took place, the patience, I think that's really carried on to the year this year as well. So I'm loving the collaboration that I see that has changed from the pandemic.
Absolutely. And I love the mindset that you've each displayed so far. Let's jump over to Jeff at the high school level. Reflect from a high school end. I'm thinking from the high school early on in the pandemic as proms were canceled, sports seasons were canceled, and there was so much often taken away. Some of those struggles that we have that kids live their whole career in education looking for, and then that got let down. And so talk to us a little bit about the journey at the high school level in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Jan and Erin and Whitney mentioned, and it's become a cliche statement, and that is the idea of we're all in this together. I think back to March of 2020, we sent everybody home abruptly. I know we were not expecting it, nor did we believe that actually that would ever happen. And I also think about from that perspective for our staff, no one really knew what was happening. So the timeline in our head is this is going to be short term. And then in the summer of August, we'll come back and it will be like normal. We'll just get through this, whatever this is. And that was not the case. In fact, it actually became more restrictive. And one of the things I noticed when bringing the staff back at that point was emotion of the unknown, emotion of the previous months. As you talked about from a student perspective, I think one of the things as we reflect on now is all the parents keep asking, how's it going? And it's going great because exactly what you said, Tom, where we've had sports, we've had dances, we've had musical performances, we've had extracurricular clubs, all of the things that make a high school experience what it is and those memories they cherish. This year, we've been able to say yes and bring those all back. But as you said, the class of 2020, felt like things were stolen from them quickly. And the level of resiliency that they've displayed, especially the class of 2021 that actually had it worse an entire year of there were no dances, there were no sports. Everything was very restrictive. I couldn't go even to support my students and my friends. And we always talk about the resiliency of kids and adolescents. And if there's one thing I think all of us have noticed is sometimes we say kids are resilient. They have shown their level of resiliency these past couple of years. And it doesn't mean it hasn't been hard and challenging, but they have grown through a time that we never thought would happen. And they've become stronger and they become more appreciative of what they do have because they've watched it all go away. And I know just talking about with some of our graduates who are thinking about commencement in a couple of weeks, they were actually piloting their speeches. And that was one of the themes in their speeches of just perspective, resiliency, grit, and just an appreciation from young people that, again, they're spectacular and they are in fact the truly resilient. And that has been kind of our journey this last almost 2 years.
Absolutely. So well said. And, I know as all of our viewers are watching, they can relate to the things that you all were just talking about and are picturing where they were a few years ago, some of the things their students missed, but also the resilience and the greatness of our teaching staff and how they've stepped up across the board. But there's a reason that I asked your district on behalf of Future Ready Schools in Indian Hill. And one of the things that I've been so impressed with is I really believe that the four of you, as well as your superintendent and your teachers, have adopted a mindset of truly emerging stronger post-pandemic. And so I'm going to ask us to each reflect on an area where you've really looked at critically, you've reevaluated, and you said, moving forward, this has to be a priority, or we're going to redesign this for our kids because we're recognizing with the information we have now that it should look a little different. Because I know that at every level, you've had some autonomy to recreate, to redesign, so that post-pandemic, we're not just retreating and it looks like 2019 part 2. You're looking at it and saying, how do we provide better experiences, better opportunities, meet kids' needs in new and different ways? How do we emerge from that pandemic even stronger? So Aaron, I'm going to go back to you. Talk to us from a primary school end. What's been going on? How are you emerging from the pandemic? Some of those things that you're saying, we're going to carry this forward, or that have changed and shifted. What's that look like at your level?
Well, Tom, I really have many stories to tell about things that improved because of changes we had to make. But I think one that continues to be at the forefront and is actually pushing us forward and helping us make plans for the future is we'd had a longstanding STEM program. Students went into a classroom with a teacher who introduced them to a STEM challenge, talked about the 4 C's, and then they went back to their class to do math, reading, science. And pandemic, we're no longer having kids get together in groups that aren't in their classroom. We're not having different teachers go into classrooms. But teachers were asking, oh, my kids keep talking about STEM. Could you help me put together some STEM lessons that I could do in my classroom, since it's just me that's having contact with these kids? And we do have a teacher here who is very passionate about STEM, was teaching the STEM classes that were brought to her. And she started collaborating with teachers, even though she had another role. She started sitting down with teachers, helping them plan STEM lessons that fit in with their content and their curriculum. And great things emerged. The kids were excited. The teachers were so excited about the engaging lessons that they were bringing to their kids. And they're beginning to see the curricular connections. Oh, well, we've been working on measurement. And here we are creating a STEM lesson where they're doing lots of measurement in order to measure their progress and to make another iteration. And what came of it is this year we sat down to plan, and all of us kind of looked at each other and said, we're not having STEM classes. What we're having is this teacher, Mrs. Dawkins, she's going to support teachers in bringing STEM into their classrooms. And that's what we've done this year. And we decided we're really good at this and we should go for STEM designation. Ohio has, through the Department of Education, a STEM designation process, very lengthy, I would say very rigorous. It forces you to reflect and take stock of what you're doing and do it better. And we said, we can do this. And we embarked on that process. We're hoping to be STEM designated this year, but if not, we're going to go back at it. We're going to make the changes they suggest to us. But the process has been good for us as adults. It's been even better for the kids. Here they are getting STEM as part of their curriculum. And we have made this term, Mrs. Dawkins, our teacher, who's our STEM champion, calls it STEM as pedagogy. And it's literally changing the way that we teach. And that all came just out of necessity, out of the pandemic, out of an inability to bring two classes together and move them into another room. And the change has been phenomenal. We're looking next year to do some extensive PBL training. We have a lead team. We're having lab classrooms where teachers get to go in and watch each other teach and improve their instructional acquiesce, because of a pandemic. We're grateful for it.
I absolutely love that. And I love how the challenges have brought opportunities. You know, what a case of back against the wall, nowhere else to turn. We can't do it the way we've done it. Let's redesign it. And all of a sudden we're saying, hey, this actually is a better way to do it. Let's keep rolling that forward. What a great story related to that. Whitney, let's jump to you. Talk to us about the elementary level and how you're going to emerge stronger. What have you been looking at there?
I agree with Aaron. There are so many things to talk about that have come out of the pandemic and that have been so much better for our students. But one thing to focus on is opportunities for all students. And in particular, we had some programs that were only traditionally offered to our gifted students. They were offered outside the classroom, much like Aaron's STEM opportunities, and only certain students got to go into that classroom. But with 3 feet and everybody having to, you know, stay at the same desk and not move around the building, we had to come up with different ideas. And so one idea in particular was the stock market game. Traditionally, kids only in Discovery, which is what we call our gifted program, were able to participate in the stock market game. And it's put on by UC, and it's good for all kids. And so we decided we're going to try it with every 5th grader. We're going to see how they do. And they loved it. It was wonderful last year. We continued to do it. And we continued to, when we transitioned this year, and we did have our gifted services again, we really thought about why would we not give that opportunity again to all students? And so we kept that going with our 5th graders. And it's been amazing to see what they can all learn. All students deserve the opportunity to have these learning experiences. And where traditionally we would have our gifted students go, and they typically come in first in the state of Ohio in the virtual part of it, where they're given $100,000 to invest. They have partners, they choose stocks, they trade, and go through the whole process. And traditionally, they do a very good job. And we had students, again, come in first place this year, but they were students that were not in our Discovery program. And so the winners have the opportunity to go to the University of Cincinnati and present about their story and what they decided to invest in. And so we sent these students that traditionally wouldn't have been given this opportunity to present, and they came in first again there. And it was against middle schoolers and high schoolers. And it was just an amazing experience that otherwise they wouldn't have been able to participate in. And so it's really caused us to go back and to analyze all of our programs and figure out what have we traditionally offered just a specific group of students, and why don't we give that to all students. And so it's been a positive change. It's something that we're going to continue and look into our other practices to make sure that we give those opportunities to everyone.
Yeah, I have chills as you were sharing that last piece of the access for all, right? First question is, do you have any business cards for any of those students? Because I can use somebody to work on my portfolio right now. It's my first question. Second question, though, no, in all seriousness, as I was processing that, I'm also thinking about, how many times in our schools do we have structures and systems that don't allow certain students that could thrive partake because they don't meet whatever that might be. Their IQ is 129 instead of 130 or whatever it might be, and they just missed, but they could have completely thrived in that environment. And sometimes we sit back and we provide opportunities for some kids. So thank you for your vulnerability as well, and recognizing we didn't offer that to other students prior, but then look at the outcome when we did. And kudos to you all as well. At Future Ready, we're really equity focused. How do we break down some of those barriers, some of those lines that have kind of held some folks back in the past, to say, where else might we be doing that? Where else are we lacking opportunity for all kids and only providing for some? And so thank you for your vulnerability, but kudos to those students, and how amazing is that, especially moving forward. Let's jump over to the middle level. Jennifer, reflect on your end. What's emerging stronger from the pandemic for you all?
I think one of the things that we're most proud of as a district is that we really prioritized kids over content. And so one of the things that I saw as the pandemic really highlighted, not only in Indian Hill, but nationwide, the need for a focus on student mental health and wellness. And so as we began our online portions of instruction, we started doing connections, like how can we come up with an online game? And so our teachers would start to collaborate and come up with, okay, here is the icebreaker for the day. And that really built those relationships up that we know are so important for our students. And what we saw was it really transformed the way that students participated, whether they were in person or online. And so as we built up these programs, we saw this is so important that we need to carve out a special time each week to make sure that we focus on students and our character education program. So we have all sorts of things. We have community building activities so that each person feels like they are a part not only of our middle school, but also a part of Indian Hill School District. We also have our pillars. And so we talk about what does it mean to be a leader, and how can you serve others in not only our community, but the bigger and broader community, the city of Cincinnati, the state. And we have kids who really, as I look at them as they grow into high school, I mean, wow, what a difference they're making. We look at empathy for others. One of my favorite days is the Rock Your Socks. So we did a lesson on how autism awareness and how we show empathy for those who might be different, and how can we build those connections and make everyone feel like they're part of our team, they're part of our building, they're part of our community. This has been a huge journey for us. It was something that all kids participate in grades 6 through 8. It's the same lesson every week. And so that too has built our community connections within the building. And we have big plans for next year, or I should say in 2 years, when we go into our new school, where we're going to divide it up 6, 7, 8, so that we have little family units that can grow. Just because we've seen such a bond built between the teacher and their advisory bell, that we want to make sure that we can expand on that and make it even bigger and better for our students.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the human focus, the human centered aspect to all of that, the SEL, the recognizing the people side of it, right? I really believe every district out there moved in that direction in the pandemic. They recognized the need, but my fear is many run right back to data and forget about the human side of that work. And so kudos for you for strengthening that, moving forward, recognizing it, and continuing that moving forward as well. Jeff, over to you, high school level. How are you emerging stronger from the pandemic? What's that look like for you all?
Yeah, I think one of the things, Tom, you just mentioned is, how do you change the mindset when you have to versus when you want to? And you hope those two ideas align, but so often they don't. So again, COVID in March of 2020 sent us home and said, go figure it out. And as the team has stressed, so much of that focus was not content. Even at a high school level, where we put that burden on ourselves about College Board and AP testing and end of course testing and the amount that's required, the shift of the focus was really connecting with kids. And then how do you do that? And one of the things I'm most proud of that really accelerated our growth in the last 2 years is the use of technology. So often you hear about technology as a tool, and so often you talk about, does technology create innovation? And the reality, as we know, is technology is innovative only in the hands of teachers that want to use it in an innovative way. And if they use it in an innovative way and they approach now lesson design in a unique and creative way, now the experiences that kids get become transformational. And one of the things that I'm most proud of for our staff is if you watched and walked through the classrooms on a daily basis all the time 2 years ago, amazing things were happening. But so often that locus of control was still a singular unit. Oftentimes it's a teacher, or maybe it's one group, or it's one student. But through the pandemic, because we were forced to find ways to collaborate, to connect, to do that with fidelity, to also ensure that kids have access to the materials that we're creating, and allowing them a platform to also still connect with each other, leveraging the technology that we've had, but also wanting to learn about ed tech tools, learning management systems that are out there, and how to maximize those tools for all the right reasons, which is student connection, conversation, creating ways to provide and receive feedback from students. And the shift became more about learning and connection, and sometimes the accumulation of points and grades. And so much of that became what we first talked about with kids when we talked about our journey is, how are our kids doing? Not what's their GPA, what are the grades that they have? Let's take care of the child first, but leveraging technology in a way that we had to, and now seeing how it's come to fruition in class on an everyday basis. Because now, as you realize that we don't have to do it all. Let's empower the most important and impressive voice in our schools through our lesson design, which are our kids, and let's unleash their creativity. That, I think, has been something that our teachers are they're embracing more. Like, I don't need to do it. I'm just going to throw an idea out there and I'm going to let our students run with it. But we're going to empower them to run with those ideas and fail forward, because we did this during COVID because we had to. And we were afraid of what it was going to do. And then we realized, man, they're so special. Let's make that just part of what we do. And then now the how we do it is truly tied to the why we do it. And that, I think, is the most impressive thing I love to see every day from bell to bell, class to class, is the amount of creativity, innovation, collaboration, and student agency that exists in all our classrooms. And I'm going to be honest, our district and this team, we're just getting started. So that's one of the things that I get so excited about. And COVID and the pandemic, it forced us to get there way faster than I think we ever would.
Absolutely. And kudos to every teacher, administrator with their back against the wall said, I'll figure it out. I'll learn this tool. The amount of professional growth that's happened in terms of skills or training in a lot of different ways as well has been absolutely phenomenal. And so kudos to all those teachers that made all those different things work as well. And to you all, loved that. I want to ask you real quick follow-up questions for all of you, because you all touched on the human side of things. What advice do you have, or how do we continue to make sure the human connection, as you were just saying there, Jeff, the connectedness side, how do we make sure we don't lose sight of that as we emerge from the pandemic and just don't go back to just, that's the way we've always done it, right? How do we make sure that the human side, I love that theme of kids before content. I know, your superintendent, Kirk, is a huge advocate. We have to put that child first, kids first, every time, kids before content, that whole theme that you've had throughout the pandemic. Is also why you're working there, number one. But number two, it's also why you've had some of these successes, why you continue to bring it back to the human side of the work. So how do we keep the human-centeredness moving forward? What plans do you have maybe, or what are you going to do as the building principal to make sure that we stay focused on our people side first? Now, Jeff, I'm actually going to start with you because you've had to go last every time being a high school principal. So I'm flipping the order. So sorry, Aaron, you're going to wait on this one. So Jeff, they're not going to steal all your great ideas to start here. So Jeff, kick us off on that. Moving forward, high school principal, how do you stay focused? How do you keep your team focused on staying human-centered?
Well, I think first and foremost, it goes back to relationships and time and trust with our people. I think everybody that comes to work every day because they love kids, and they love kids before they love their content. And I think one of the words you heard the team talk about it, and that is community. And what are the opportunities that we're going to continue to take and invest and develop to build community, both inside our staff, inside our classroom, inside our school, inside our district, and then beyond. I think it goes back to just, it has to be an intentional focus and lead every conversation. So whether we're talking about our developing strategic plan, or we're talking about experience-ship programs that we're developing here at the high school to connect with outside stakeholders, to have students experience real world learning opportunities that, quite frankly, they have not been allowed to do for the most part for 2 years. I think it just has to be an intentional focus on building relationships in a constant way of trust, of togetherness, so that culture that you build is one that folks want to be a part of. They want to build this sense of community, and also empowering your students, whether it's a student leadership council or just in general conversation. Let them share their story with us. Let them tell us how much this pandemic has impacted them in a positive way, in a negative way, and let us learn from those lessons, because so much of the things that you'll hear when you ask students are positive, but they're so insightful. And so much of what they talk about is also about connecting. It's really, it's talking from the heart. It's the impact teachers make on the life of a student because of the journey or a conversation, or, hey, you just gave them that head nod when they needed it. Or during COVID, you were the one to call more frequently. Those stories have to continue to be told so they always resonate with our thoughts, our plans, and moving forward. And I think it just goes back to an intentional focus on that becoming, or really just re-emphasizing, that's our why. We do this for our kids. We do this to connect with our kids. And I think it's just that intentional focus and reminder, like, that's what we get to do every day. And what an immense privilege. And let us never forget that or take it for granted.
Awesome. Absolutely love that. Bringing that back. Thank you for sharing those pieces there. One of the things that you made me think of as well, knowing the four of you and knowing the work of your district, the importance of principals modeling the work that we've all been talking about, not just preaching from their office on what their teachers have to do, but modeling that mindset, modeling the community, modeling that trust building. I've seen that you do that in your buildings. And I think that modeling is really, really important. It's easy to say, go do, as opposed to let's do this as a team and give me your input and thoughts, and let's create a culture where people want to be. And so I wanted to give that compliment to the four of you, because I've seen you all in action in that regard. So let's go, Jennifer, let's jump to the middle school level. How do you keep that focus, human-centered, moving forward?
Well, I would say everything that Jeff said, but two other things to add on to that. One is protect that specific time that we have set aside. So easy, it's looking at it and saying, oh, what if we give up the flex time so we can get this in or get that in? But we want to protect that time. That is time for our students to connect with the teachers, to connect with one another. And that is set in stone. And it is really hard for me to say, okay, let's give that up, because I see the importance and the teachers see the importance, and really we hear from the students how important that time is for them. So that's one of the things that I always want to focus on is protecting that. And then the other thing is, in addition to what Jeff said, is share that story. And so if you look at our social media accounts, whether it's Instagram or we use Twitter, you will see us highlighting students, and you'll see students telling their stories. It's not just us telling them, it's students telling them. And so I think that's a way that we share with our community how impactful some of these things that we are doing are making on not only our staff, our community, but also just most importantly, the students. And so those are two things that I would like to add on. I think, and I would encourage anybody to follow our Twitter account so that you can see some of the things that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And one of the ways that I continue to see your stories is exactly that. And so thank you for sharing that there as well. Let's jump to the elementary level. Whitney, tell us about your ideas, your thoughts on staying human-centered at your level moving forward.
Well, as Jeff said, we do have the best teachers, and they love kids. and they want kids to be taken care of. And we are so fortunate that we have a culture like that in Indian Hill. But I think every decision we make, we have to bring it back to, are the students at the center of the decision? Every decision has to be centered around that. Otherwise, we're not meeting them where they are. Like Jen said, at the elementary as well, we have a time set aside every week where we teach our brave lessons. That is every week. It's a non-negotiable. They all teach it at that time because it is good for kids. At the elementary school, and I know at the primary school as well, every kid is greeted by their name during their morning meeting every morning, because we want every student to hear their name every day, because some students can go through a whole school day and never hear their name. And it's so important for everybody to be addressed by their name every day. Another unique thing about the elementary school is a couple of years ago, we opened what we call our Brave Room, where it's just a room where if a kid needs a break from class, is feeling anxious about school or about life, that they can just go take a break. It's right next to our school counselor. So if they need to check in with her, they have timers in there, different fidgets, different calming tools that they can use. And they stay in for about 5 minutes. It's just a really nice place to go and reset. Oftentimes you might see adults in there too. But it's a place that we have for our students and for our staff to just take a break, because they often need it. They work so hard while they're here all day long. And so they deserve to have that calming time.
Absolutely. I love that. Erin, sorry, I made you wait. So I'm coming back to you on this one, Erin. Talk to us about staying human-centered with the little ones at your level.
I mean, I think the best story of this is when we came back in August of 2020. And, I was sharing with everybody to throw out the window everything the first thing that this staff wanted to problem solve was how we hug kids. Like, that's so important to them at this level, the children, and it's also important to the adults. And so the first thing that we solved was, what is it going to look like to give a kid a hug? We have a teacher who is fluent in sign language. She shared with us what a hug in sign language looks like. We did a staff introduction of it. All the teachers introduced us to their kids on the very first day. And we also didn't shy away from saying to a child, do you need a hug? And if they said yes, we actually gave them a hug. It was, we were trying to be as safe as possible, but that social emotional growth and well-being comes before everything else. So I love to share that story because it came from the staff. Like, we don't, it doesn't matter how we're going to do everything else. How are we going to show them that we love them and then we care about them every day? And so I do think that that's carried on in many ways now that we can give hugs again, but there just seems to be a heightened awareness of how are we feeling, because we had such a time where we were together but isolated, and the kids were in the same boat. And so I think we generally check in on each other more, and we check in on kids more. This year, we started our year with going through the picture of every single child in our building and noting whether or not we knew their name, whether or not we knew something personal about them, whether or not we'd had a conversation with them, not sentences, but a conversation. And if we found that there were kids standing out who didn't have those things going on in their lives from us, their pictures went in everybody's mailboxes. And those are the kids to connect with right away. So I think the human connection is, we were good at it, but we're great at it now. And it's the the most important thing that we do. And on top of that, because we had a year of no volunteers, virtual family events, we're so eager to sit down and problem solve or even make better iterations of a family STEM night. This year, that's something we've been doing for years. This year, we had student presentations and families giving feedback using QR codes. It's we're taking it to the next level. It's not just come be with us, it's come interact with us. And that's every time we sit down and think about going beyond our building walls, how do we get that interaction to occur between students and community members, students and professionals. And so we're just doing a better job taking care of each other all the way around.
Absolutely. And kudos to each of you for sharing that journey, reflecting on the human side of pieces. I love the mindset that you display and that you share. So I have to say here in the webinar, I did invite your superintendent, Kirk Konecki, to come join us for this. And I have to tell you, from a leadership end, I was so impressed when he said, Tom, I want my principals just to be able to do their thing and to shine. But I'm actually going to bring him back just for a moment and they're all like, wait, what do you mean you're bringing him back? I thought he was no, I'm going to bring back a snapshot flashback to the podcast where he gives his principals a shout out, those folks you've been hearing from. And he also mentions community. And then we're going to dive into that for just a moment. So let's go ahead to the podcast that we recorded a few months back. Take a listen.
When you go back to the spring of 2020 and we all went into emergency remote learning here in Ohio, what that meant for our district was that people had to change their roles. And I was so proud of our principals and how some of them literally became drivers overnight, delivering food, delivering computers to homes, helping troubleshoot on networks so that our students could get online and learn. I was so proud of our teachers and principals working together in collaborative committees literally around the clock to make sure that we had a curriculum and programming in place. And again, that was 2 years ago, but that set us up for success through that first year of the pandemic in ways that I just can't even place a number on. It's invaluable what our principals and our teacher leaders did together to help students and families get through the beginning of that pandemic.
So for Kirk, who is, I'm sure, watching, we brought you back into the webinar anyway, but shout out to your principals. That's the team that you've all been listening to here, the awesome team that's here. Kirk mentioned and gave you a shout out related to things that you were doing for your community as well, driving food, becoming drivers overnight, the four of you and others, I'm sure, doing just whatever it took in those moments. And kudos to all educators who were in those front lines. But let's talk just for a minute or two apiece. The community side of things, that's a word that you've used, each of you have used throughout. A lot of times we're talking about externally and our parents and our churches, our businesses, places of worship, those kinds of things there. Internally, community inside of our school and our culture and those different pieces there as well. How do we, and at Future Ready, to throw out there, our community partnerships as part of our gear of overall framework for transforming schools moving forward. Let's talk quickly, if we could, about the importance of community, building that community, visioning forward, working with community, any take that you want there at your level and what it looks like, either internal or external. So I'm actually going to give Whitney the chance to go first. Let's start at the elementary level, if we could. Talk to us about that, the community side of things.
Well, first of all, I want to point out that driving was one of my favorite things to do when the pandemic started, because you actually, every once in a while, even though you were far, you got to see a kid. So you would drop their food on their doorstep, knock on the door, then you had to step back to make sure it was picked up, and you got to see kids. And so I just want to point that out. It was an honor to be able to do that. But building community is so important. And we were so siloed in the classrooms, when we could not switch classes and let the kids have recess together and things like that. So even just to be able to have kids play together has been wonderful this year, because they've gotten to build community that way. But then we have gotten to bring things back, like Jeff mentioned at the high school, concerts. We had our first concert not too long ago, and it was so wonderful to have people in the building, and the kids were so happy, and the parents were happy to see their kids perform. Some of them hadn't seen that in over 2 years, and it was just unbelievable. But also just starting to give them more beyond the classroom learning experiences by, we have a great partnership with Green Acres, so they got to start going back to Green Acres here in Cincinnati. Parents getting to attend field trips and getting to come into the building again for classroom parties at the holiday time. So just all of those things that I think we took for granted before the pandemic, how important they are to have those community partnerships and volunteering opportunities for our parents and our community members to come into the building.
Awesome. And I was just at a concert last night for my daughter being back at our middle school, taking a look, just that community coming together, celebrating the incredible abilities of our students is so vital and something that was missed. Let's stay at the middle school level. Jennifer, community building, either internally, externally, talk to us a little bit about that on your end.
Sure. Well, last year we were unable to have grade level assemblies or whole school assemblies because we were isolated and we were limiting the number of times kids could be in the hallway. And this year we're kind of unique in compared to the other buildings because all 3 grades are in different locations. And so for us, it's really hard to build that one building feeling. And so this year we said we have to come up with a way. We have to do something. And so we invited all 6th, 7th, 8th grade families and students to a day of tubing at Perfect North. And this was super important for us because it was the first time in two years that we were able to have everyone together. And we had over 500 students plus probably 150 family members that showed up for this event during the school day. And just seeing that interaction, the fun, the smiles, the students who were in grade 6 meeting up with the kids who were in grade 8, just the leadership and the mentoring that was going on, it just really reinforced the importance of having those times where all the community is together. And so now we're thinking about, okay, end of school year is coming up. How can we do another school-wide event? How can we do all the logistics and getting everyone from one spot to the next, making sure that we have buses and all of that, just because seeing the students, the families together, it just is it's the whole deal. You know, it makes you feel like this is what school is all about.
Absolutely. And I loved seeing that being shared out when that happened. Mm-hmm. The smiles were absolutely incredible. Erin, let's jump over to you. At your level, community building or working with community partnerships.
Yeah, I touched on this earlier and just how it's become such a focus for us. I do think we have done well the idea of bringing families in to have fun with their kids. Performances also are amazing. What a time of pride for many families. But we try to stage events where kids can have fun with their parents, involved in STEM challenges or literacy activities. But we've really turned our focus to be, how do we harness this amazing community that we have of professionals, of well-educated people that are in fields we can't even dream of as educators, that can come and share with our students all of the possibilities that they could be, even as young as they are now, thinking about how are we developing career experiences and career pathways, but exposure. And we're talking about how we bring that into the curriculum. So a very small example of something we accomplished this year, but we want to grow exponentially, is we partnered with our architecture firm. We're going through some renovations. We're working with this amazing architecture firm, but we began to think through this idea of, is there a way our kids could help in this renovation? And we sat down and we had an hour-long meeting. We brainstormed with them. They came in, they brought in people to come and talk to every single classroom, K through 2, and take special people to really understand 5-year-olds, right? They came into every classroom, talk to the kids about what does it mean to design a playground? What are the parameters you're working around? What things should you think about? And our kids, and this also occurred at the elementary school, our kids designed, every single classroom submitted a design for a playground. Our architects came, provided some feedback, they made improvements, and right now those designs went to the architects. The architects are going to come to us this month or next month, come to us with final designs, and our kids will select the final design for their playground that'll be installed next summer. So we're beginning to think big like that. Like, how do our children impact the community? And how do our children learn from people in the community beyond their parents and beyond the teachers that they see every single day? And so that was a small example, but that's where we want to go. That's what we want our community really to be: inside, outside, all of the time. People who don't have children know the names of our children.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that's a small example at all. I think that's an incredible example of that student voice and just leveraging that. I mean, how often do we write off thinking, especially at that age, oh, they're 5 or 6. What are they going to do with the architectural plans, right? But think about the pride when that playground gets put out there, once that's renovated and new. Also probably think about the care the students will take because they've had a part in it. They've had a voice in it, right? And what an amazing opportunity for them. Jeff, high school level, talk to us a little bit about community. I know you touched on it a little bit earlier. Anything you want to build on?
So there's two stories that I'd love to share, and one is right in the midst of the pandemic. So again, we go home in March, and at the end of April, I get an email from a student who at that point was a sophomore, who was going to be isolated home, and immediately felt that she needed to do something to help other students like herself who are home and alone connect with classmates. So she emails me this idea and she asks, Mr. Damadeo, do you think it would be possible if we got a bunch of high school volunteers to hook into the elementary school and the primary school kids and some of our 6th graders and create what they eventually called the Corona Care Callers Program? And they recruit over 115 high school volunteers that said, I want to be part of this. What they did on a weekly basis is they connected for 30 minutes, sometimes an hour, with a student from 1st grade, 2nd grade, and their parents, 4th grade, just to talk about the experience that they're having as an adolescent in high school through all of this, and just allowing this connection between a younger student and themselves. And, you know, when we think about what we want for our students in the future, what are the characteristics we want our own kids to exemplify when they get older? I don't know if I've ever seen a better example so fast in the midst of something that was so unique and challenging. And her first thing is, I'm feeling isolated, but I think this feeling, I can take this, channel it, and do something really great with it. And then this young lady's program, we started getting phone calls from other schools that wanted to replicate it. She was eventually featured on the Today Show, like NBC's Today Show, about, again, when you think about, like you said, emerging through the pandemic, just an unbelievable story of why community is so important. And it's not just community that's important through our own lens as adults and educators, but how important it is to build community and feel like there is a community through the eyes of kids. And I can't be more proud of our own kids when I get to share that story. And it's hard to talk about it and not get choked up, I'll be honest, because she's tremendous. She's going to graduate. But that program still goes on. And schools copied and called, like, help us build this. I mean, it was just an incredible story of what could be done in the face of challenges to build connection with kids.
That's absolutely incredible. Yet another example, another level. I think everybody that's still with us in this webinar, all these folks are understanding why I brought these 4 in, and to highlight the district at all the levels, the mindset of our admin, and the work that's been done by the teachers, the culture to create all this, the leveraging of student voice, so many amazing examples that we stand for here at Future Ready that you're exhibiting each and every day. So we are basically out of time, but I'm going to ask you each one final question, kind of 30 seconds or less apiece, for your principal colleagues across the country. No matter where they are as we emerge from this pandemic, what's one piece of advice? You're obviously experienced, incredible leaders that are doing wonderful things with your teachers and with your students. What's just one piece of advice, no matter where they are in the continuum, no matter where they find themselves working, what's one piece of advice that you have? Erin, we'll start with you.
Mine is say yes. If someone has an idea, say yes.
Absolutely.
And they'll figure it out, or you'll help them figure it out, but just try something new every day.
Absolutely love that. I had a leader one time say, when a teacher walks into your office and they ask you if they can try something or do something, is their gut instinct you're going to say no, or you're going to say yes? That also tells you a lot about culture. Love that, Erin. Thanks for sharing that. Whitney, how about you?
I think we've all learned this through challenging times. There will become growth, and difficult conversations. Anything you go through challenging, you're always going to learn something new and come out better.
Absolutely. Well said. Jennifer.
For me, it would be dream big and share. A lot of the things that you hear us talking about today, they started off as, what if we did this? Or wouldn't it be great if this happened? And then we shared those ideas out, and it happened. And along with Aaron, say yes. I mean, we have some great things going on because it started off as a dream.
Absolutely. Jeff, bring it home.
I would say, remember the impact you're making. I think at times through all of this, it's been hard to figure out, am I doing the right thing? Am I supporting my staff and my students the right way? I think we all have learned it through our world of education. The impact you have, so often you don't know about it until years later. So I would encourage everybody, like, if this is your why, tough times don't last, and tough people do. Every moment you're spending in your building, connecting with people and students and parents, it matters. It matters more than we'll ever know. So don't ever quit. Keep going. Believe in yourself and believe in your people, because they're making magic around you and they need you.
Well, my friends, I'm impressed yet again. These four absolutely rock. And so, Kirk, I'm sorry, but I think some folks are going to be recruiting your principals in the very near future. So I apologize about that. But my friends, that is all the time that we do have for today. We do want to thank Aaron, Whitney, Jen, and Jeff for sharing their incredible insights with our districts today. What an amazing, amazing conversation. Thank the four of you so much. I do want to remind our viewers that information about Future Ready Schools can also be found at futureready.org. We continue to challenge school district superintendents to join the over 3,500 others that have signed the Future Ready District Pledge. We also encourage our school and district leaders to join one of this fall's Future Ready events, which we will be launching very, very soon. I also want to encourage our viewers to get involved with our growing strands, from district leaders to tech leaders, principals, librarians, instructional coaches. We've vastly expanded the reach of Future Ready Schools in recent years. Check out our private Facebook groups, ongoing activities to stay connected with those working alongside you throughout the nation as well. Finally, again, Aaron, Whitney, Jen, Jeff, thank you so much, as well as thank each of you, our viewers, for joining us for this Future Ready webinar. Don't forget to connect with us at Future Ready on Twitter at Future Ready and on Facebook at facebook.com/Future Ready Schools. If you missed any of today's conversation, it'll be archived at futureready.org/webinars. Thank you again so much for joining us here at Future Ready. Have a fabulous day. We'll see you next time.